So you're getting ready to write a flash nonfiction piece for this class. Flash fiction is a popular modern way of telling a story, and the only difference is we're making it a nonfiction piece. So it's something from your life, from your culture, from the life of your parents, your relatives, your ancestors, or just something that's happened to you in your life. So writing a complete story using just between 150 and 300 words can be a bit of a challenge, especially when the stories must contain a beginning and a middle and an end still. After all, that's sort of what makes a story out of a grouping of individual words, right? So we still have to have those pieces. The trick is to arrange those 200 or so words into an order that makes them pleasing to our eyes, ears, brains, emotions, and our hearts, the way all stories should. So in other words, readers want to feel what they read. And that can be a little bit difficult, but a little bit exciting to do in a flash nonfiction piece. And so here are some helpful tips. First of all, remember to keep the idea small. A big story can be far too convoluted and complicated to cut to a maximum goal of around 200 words. So flash nonfiction writers need a dose of tunnel vision to help them complete their word challenge stories. Keeping on the blinders, focusing mostly on getting to the end, that will help to avoid the use of unneeded words. And so we're not just trying to shorten a story, we're trying to pick the most precise words we can use to get our point across in fewer words than we would in a longer story. So we want to keep our ideas small. We're not going to be writing the Count of Monte Cristo or a Shakespeare play, obviously, when we're doing flash fiction or flash nonfiction. So take a look at the list of ideas that are on the assignment sheet. Or you can come up with some ideas of your own, something that's happened in your life. Think of something funny, something sad, or an inspiring event from your life or the lives of your relatives or your ancestors. Or if you have trouble with that, you can use a photo prompt. So for inspiration, pick a photo from your phone photos or a family photo album and tell a story about that photograph. Tell what happened there. So once you have an idea for a story, what's next? Well, where to start? What about starting in the middle of the story, where the character's conflict begins? Maybe you can avoid that usual backstory, flashbacks, prologues, and all that filler that's at the beginning of lengthier stories. Maybe you can start right with the conflict. You may not have space for everything else. Remember that every single word must count when you're writing this flash nonfiction. And so it's sort of like finding a map. And instead of necessarily starting at the beginning and getting all the way to the end, you might pick up the story pretty close to the end of it or in the middle of it. And remember, this is still a story, so we want to include emotions. You absolutely must make your reader feel something when they read the story. It's up to you to decide what that something is. Do you want them to feel sadness, happiness, amusement, astonishment? But whatever you decide, be sure to keep it simple. You probably aren't going to make them feel a whole range of emotions the way you might during a Shakespeare play. Characters. 1 or 2 characters are probably all that's needed. Now, this is a story from something in your life, and so there might be more than that, but any more characters than that, and it could get a little confusing, so tread carefully. And that's especially if you include dialogue in such a short piece of writing. That dialogue, that talking, oops, that's spelled wrong, that can get a little bit confusing. Sensory details. So this goes without saying. We did a lesson on sensory details. You have to show the action in your story. Don't tell the action. Don't say, she went to the store, then she went home, then she made dinner. No one wants a list of events. They want to feel what's happening. She slowly trudged to the store through the rain. Upon getting there, the store was closed and she felt sadness. And so show us, don't just tell us the things that she did. Use those sensory details that appeal to all of the senses and her feelings as well. And again, it has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You can't just cut corners because it's a short piece of writing. And a twist at the end is sometimes a nice little surprise. So once you've written your story, then it will be time to edit because you'll have to break out the carving knives and go to work on trimming all of the excess. Because remember, your story should be between 150 and 300 words. So how do we do this? Well, get rid of space wasters. Space wasters are words like a lot or really or very. Those are these unnecessary little vague words. So make sure that your story is rich with details, but definitely skimp on the vague words because they waste space. And most importantly, when you write this, remember to have fun. And when you do your editing, if you need help finding your word count, if you're in Microsoft Word, in the tabs at the top, click on Review, and then just click on word count, and it will tell you how many words you have. And so I would do that during the editing process, once you've gotten your ideas on paper. Now let's look at the sample story that's on the instruction sheet for this assignment. And remember, we're going to be looking for these aspects: emotion, characters, sensory details, a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I'll read it, the story, and then we'll look for those items. Wilbur had been in this muddy, smelly, horrid bunker for 3 days with the rest of his platoon. He was ready to give up and just walk out onto the battlefield, accepting his fate. He could no longer tolerate the smells, the sounds, the hunger. Suddenly, Wilbur's commander shouts, "Everybody down, get down and cover." Wilbur hits the mud at the bottom of the bunker face first. Everything begins spinning in slow motion. His ears feel like they have exploded. His eyes burn. He gasps to catch his breath. Then all is dark and quiet. Slowly, Wilbur wakes up. He is covered in mud and ash. Slowly, he raises his hand to his face, removing debris and mud, finding blood running down from his ear to his chin. Looking around, he realizes he is the only survivor, the only one from his entire platoon who will walk out of this bunker, off this field, the only one who will return home, the only one to see his family again, the only one. Okay, so first of all, that has a word count of 173 words, and we fit a lot into that very short passage. Notice we have emotions. We feel emotions for Wilbur. We feel his frustration in the first paragraph, that he's been in that bunker for 3 days. We feel the intensity of when they get hit in the bunker. And then we feel this feeling at the end, this appreciation for his survival, sadness for the other soldiers. So we feel quite a few emotions in such a short passage. We have one character mainly, his commander shouts, and obviously there's other soldiers, but really there's one main character. But we identify who that character is. He has a name, he has feelings, he has a life. And we can identify those things in the passage. Sensory details, there's a lot of them. It talks about smells, it talks about sounds, it talks about his own hunger. It talks about things that he hears. Everybody down, get down and cover. Catching his breath, his eyes burning. So many sensory details here. Remember, that's what brings the story alive. And obviously it does have a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning is when he's frustrated with being in the bunker. The middle is when they get hit, and the end is his survival. So that is just one sample story. And that is actually a story that happened to my grandfather Wilbur Miller. And so when I wrote this flash fiction assignment, when you go to write it, you'll write the nonfiction story, in the middle box here, the big one on the assignment sheet. This is a screenshot of the assignment. So in this big box, you'll write your story. And then at the bottom, in this box, you'll explain the significance of the story to your life, since this is our unit on culture and the culture that's affected you and how culture is expressed in our writing. And so in the bottom there, you'll write that explanation, and then you'll submit your assignment to the assignment Dropbox. It is your turn, so have fun, and I'm really looking forward to reading these.